All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CCOC budget training for county fiscal year 23-24. Thank you for taking the time this morning to join us. The goal for today is to provide an informational general budget overview, as well as provide clerks and staff the opportunity to ask any budget related questions you might have. Today, we will go over the CCOC website, the budget development process, jury funding, the EC report, the operational budget submission package, and we'll have time for any questions that you have for us. I know we have some new staff statewide, so this will hopefully help familiarize you with our budget related forms and processes. All right, so let's jump into the CCOC website. Our website is a helpful resource for clerks and staff and can be found at flccoc.org. Some recent updates include a jury management funding tab that has been added to the budget section, which is a one-stop shop for all things jury. We thought it was important to break out. We get a lot of jury questions, and there's a lot going on right now with jury. So we thought it was important to break that out into its own tab. We've also updated the historical budget information tab, which now has consistent budget data for each fiscal year, including infographics and multi-year data, some good charts. So please check that out. It's also a great resource if you're ever looking for any historical totals for the past few years. It also has that broken out by county. And as always, you can find all of our forms, council and committee information and activities, as well as other items like policies, staff information, a calendar of events, etc. Are there any questions on the website? Seeing none. Okay, well, let's jump into the budget development process. The CCOC Budget Committee oversees the annual budget process, which is a year-round endeavor. The committee continues to build upon an established process that provides consistency year over year. I would encourage all clerks and staff to tune into the budget committee meetings held throughout the year as the committee builds the court-related budget at all of those meetings. The clerk's available courtside budget amount consists of 3 items that are detailed in Florida statute. The first is the Revenue Estimating Conference's estimate for the year, projecting the total revenue collected by the clerks. The second piece is the cumulative excess of revenue collected above the prior year estimate. And the third piece is the unspent budgeted funds that are carried forward from the prior year budget. So for the fiscal year 23-24 that just started earlier this month, these numbers shake out on the screen. The REC estimate that was held in July was $458.5 million. We had $1 million of additional cumulative excess, and the unspent budgeted funds, as determined in settle up, were just under $15 million. So you add those together, and that's how we came up with the $474.4 million that the committee had available to build the clerk's revenue limited budget. So in addition to that amount, we also have $11.7 million of state general revenue funding that is appropriated by the legislature for jury reimbursement costs. That's a recurring amount that we've had for the past 8 fiscal years. So you add that to the 474, and that is how we calculate the $486.1 million, which is our total courtside budget authority, and that's a $12.7 million year-over-year increase. So how does that shake out compared to the last 4 fiscal years? So 19-20, obviously greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We had just over $403 million available. The next year, 2021, coming out of that, we had $422 million. The following year, we had a pretty substantial jump, 21-22, which we had just over $465 million. And then last year that just ended last month, we had $473.4 million. And then for the fiscal year that we're currently in, 23-24, that we just detailed, we have $486.1 million. So a breakout of how the budget committee established and determined the clerk's budget for this year. So as we've done in the past few years, the budget committee has established a base budget to build upon. And in doing so, they use two components for this year. The prior year revenue limited budget of $453.2 million. They voted to add the calculated FRS increase of $5.4 million, which is determined by the rates that the legislature approves during session. And that gave us the $458.6 million base budget to build on. So to build on that base budget, the committee added two items. The first was $1.4 million for a blended FRS rate for the estimate for the Q4 of the county fiscal year rate increase, as well as a allocation using weighted cases totaling $14.5 million. The committee also established that no clerk would receive less than a 3% year-over-year increase. And so that is how we were able to calculate the $474.4 million revenue limited budget. Are there any questions on the budget process for this year? All right, seeing none. So for determining the budget, there are two forms that we currently use. The first one is the budget issue request spreadsheet, and the second one is the revenue projection form. And with this submission that is due by the statutory deadline of June 1st, there is also a signed certification letter that is to be signed by the elected clerk that goes with it. So the spreadsheet looks like this, and this is the same spreadsheet, very similar spreadsheet that we've used for the past handful of years. It's an Excel sheet that has 5 tabs that are laid out in priority order. If you have more than 5 issue requests, you can use as many additional spreadsheets as you need, and you can just use the same order on the bottom. You can request any budget issues and additional FTE needed above the current year operating budget. The additional funding needed to cover some of these items may not be available. However, with your assistance by requesting these issues, we can accurately identify and calculate the true budgetary needs statewide. So as you can see, this spreadsheet is broken out by the 9 court service areas, which are based on the Clerk Court Services Framework, which provides a detailed list of services, activities, and tasks for clerks. And this document is also available on the CCOC website as well. Lastly, we get a lot of questions about this. The supporting documentation for issue requests is optional, but highly recommended. I would say that in tandem with adding as much detail as possible down here in the detail box is very important and very helpful, that we can tell the budget story with those issues. So as most of you know, Rafael Ali is our CCOC budget manager and helps me staff the budget committee. Rafael, please detail some of the common issues that we see with this form.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Griffin. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining again. So on the budget issue request form, something that we see a lot is not identifying if the budget issue is reoccurring in cell G6, not selecting the correct issue category in J6. So just please ensure that the drop-down boxes are completed as well for each issue. Not adding a percent increase when requesting a pay increase or a health insurance increase in the additional information box. As a reminder, like Griffin stated earlier, the more information is always better when it comes to this report. Not breaking out salaries and benefits. For example, if you have a budget request for 1 FTE that equals out to be 60,000, what part of the 60,000 is for salaries and what part of it is for benefits? This just, allows us to identify, what part of that it's true, it's truly the salary of that FTE, and what part of it is going to be, allocated to its benefits. And then, as a friendly reminder, again, on this report, really, we try to hit home that, to just add as much information as possible in the additional information box. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rafael. Any questions on the budget issue request form? See a question, Victoria.
I just want to make sure I understand correctly on the split between the salary and the benefits. That goes in the detail box at the bottom. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. So right here for the detail box, again, like Rafael mentioned, let's say that you're requesting 1 FTE and the total ask is 65,000. So in here you could put, the salary is 50,000, the benefits are 15,000. Some staff break it out even farther into, laying out FICA and health and all that. That's helpful, but just knowing the salary and the benefits issues is also very helpful.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure there wasn't like a separate issue category or something for the salaries versus the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Good morning, Griffin.
Good morning.
I want to understand here, are you saying that, we've already filled these forms out and submitted them as part of the budget process that was done over the summer. So are you saying we need to fill these out again? Or are you saying we can ask for additional resources at this point? I'm trying to understand why we're doing these forms again when we already submitted them.
Great question. Sorry for the confusion. No, we only submit these once a year. Like you said, we just submitted them back in leading up to June 1st, so back in May. And we won't use these forms again. We'll send them out probably in April. But we in going through it from June through August, we had a lot of questions and issues that came up. So we just thought it'd be helpful to kind of, as we prepare for next year, answer any of those that we had.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions. The second form in this submission is the revenue projection form. This is a straightforward form that just reflects the total year projection for the upcoming year, including a breakdown of the 10% redirects as well as the 2008-111 items. This is again, a pretty straightforward form done by month. And something to note, we usually do this form twice a year, once with the budget issue requests that are due by June 1st, and then a second time when we do the operational budget submission in fall. However, moving forward, we will only do this form once in June for the year. So we will only fill this form out, and we have always used the same form for both of those submissions. So Rafael, do you have any common mistakes?
Yes, sir. We got one. I've seen this quite often. So some counties are not, they don't project DUIs. So driving under the influence. So if that's the case for your county, please, if you could just put that in the additional notes box, explaining why that's the case, and we should be good to go. That just helps us when we're looking at it. We see that you don't have anything there. We just assume that you forgot to put it in.
All right, thank you, Rafael. Any questions on the revenue projection form? Seeing none. And again, as a reminder, we will not do this form with the upcoming operational budget submission. We will just do this form again next year. We'll probably send it out in April, but it'll be due on June 1st. All right. Let's jump into jury. All right. Each year, the legislature provides clerks $11.7 million of state general revenue that we mentioned earlier for jury reimbursement costs. These funds are released quarterly and are tracked on the state fiscal year instead of the county fiscal year. The quarterly jury management reimbursement form is the form that we use to track expenditures, as well as the disbursements made by JAC. And this is what that form looks like. So this is the 23-24 form, which is the same form that we used last year and is very similar to the forms that we used prior to that to capture the quarterly jury costs. Broken out, again, clerk personnel, the operating costs, per diem payments that are made, the $15 or $30, and then we also break out meals and lodging. And again, it's done quarterly. So quarter one is here in G, quarter two in H, and so on. One of the main things that we see with this is as we total the cost for quarter one, for example, we won't know the JAC disbursement because this is the request for that reimbursement. So we won't know that until quarter two. However, when you fill out the quarter two submission, since it's a cumulative form, at that time, you can go back to quarter one and insert the actual JAC disbursement that you received in column G. And that way it closes out everything together in quarter one. Different than in a few of our other forms, but this will be very important moving forward, especially as we will face a jury shortfall that we'll talk about in a second. This will help us calculate that accurately. So that's just something to note on this form. Rafael, did you have anything else to add for common seen mistakes?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you. So other things that we have seen on this specific form is not selecting the correct quarter on the certification letter. If you do this, we can't submit that to the JAC because it would just throw our submission, everything about our submission off because they won't know what quarter they need to reimburse you for. So please don't do that. Not selecting the correct form version in cell G5. That just helps for our record keeping purposes and to track any changes that might have occurred. Not adding the correct contact information, nor adding the correct contact. So please, please, if it's the person that filled out the jury form, is the person that needs to be added onto that contact information. This just allows us that, to be able to, if we have any additional questions or there's a revision that needs to be done, that we actually follow up with the correct person. And then, just hitting home again what Griffin said, adding the JAC reimbursement, in the correct place. For example, if the submission is for quarter two, then you must add in what the JAC reimbursed you in quarter one in cell G41. This is because even though you receive the reimbursement in the following quarter, the reimbursement is for that current quarter that you're in. So other things would be not providing additional comments on line 45 in the additional comment box for other costs. Those other cost lines are line 15 and 22, I believe. So, just adding additional information to explain, what those other costs are. And then, as a friendly reminder, always with our forms, the more information, the better. And then also you can find the jury reimbursement policy on the CCOC website and just use that as a helpful reference when you're filling out this form as well. Thank you, Griffin.
All right, thank you, Rafael. Looks like we have a question from Michael.
Hey, Griffin, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Hey, I'm here with Clerk Kinzel. I just have a question on the reimbursement. So we sent our figures for what we thought we were going to spend. I know you guys calculated those and have the total, but are we going to get back how much we can spend, or are we continuing with the same pattern of submitting for reimbursement? So at the end, when you guys had mentioned it was going to come out of the operating, if we can't get the additional funds, how are we supposed to budget for that late in the year?
That is a great question. So yes, the submission for state fiscal year quarter one is received and calculated, and we submitted to the JAC for full reimbursement for this quarter that just closed. we haven't received approval yet, but we should have sufficient funds to fully cover that quarter. That will not be the case moving forward. So again, we would just reiterate that the current projection, which could change, but the current projection is that each quarter moving forward, we will likely only have 70% of funds available for reimbursement. So that is how we would recommend planning to budget. But we will know each quarter as we move along. So for example, when this quarter that we're currently in closes and the forms are due January 10th, by the end of January, we will know and be able to message, the total cost we've had quarterly, the reimbursement that we'll have available due to the quarterly release, and that amount. So when we send out, so let's say it is 70%. So if your costs were 10,000 for that quarter, and we only had exactly 70% available, the JAC would disperse you 7,000 of your $10,000 cost. So then that $3,000 would have to come out of your CCOC budget, and then that following quarter will just start from scratch.
Okay, Griffin, this is Crystal. That won't work. I can't not spend all my operating money, not knowing what I have to pay for juries. I need a budget by quarter that I stick to, and the money that you do have is allocated that way. I can't guess if you're going to reimburse me and then not spend in operating. I am spending more in operating and being subsidized by the county just to pay court clerks. We've talked about this at each one of these. The budget needs to be established so I know what my parameters are. So I can tell the judges, hey, got people for jury, don't have people for jury. We need to know what you're giving us as a regular budget in our office. If other clerks don't need that and want to work and take it away from their operating, then they have surplus money, maybe great for them. But I want to know what Collier County can count on to be reimbursed for this year.
Okay. Well, again, as it currently sits under the reimbursement model, we'll do our best to message as much as we can and as frequently as we can and let you know as soon as we know the true amount. All right. Any other questions for jury? Seeing none. So as we just talked about, we are going to face a shortfall in jury funding. The 11.7 million statewide that we've had now for 8 years will not be sufficient to cover our projected costs. So again, as we just kind of detailed, that the funds are released quarterly, and that is how we will look at each quarterly reimbursement on its own. Again, 70% right now is the estimate that we've had. However, each of the past few quarters, we've kind of set a new record for quarterly costs. So they continue to rise. So that number might go down slightly. And again, as we mentioned, any overage each quarter will unfortunately have to come from the CCOC budget. So to the best of your ability, please just plan accordingly. And again, if you have any questions at any time, just reach out. But again, Rafael and I will, and Clerk Vic, will continue to message the jury shortfalls as we move through this fiscal year. And the good news is, hopefully this session that starts in January, hopefully that 11.7 million will be increased to a sufficient amount. So that is the hope. Any other questions for jury? Seeing none. Okay, let's jump into the EC report. All right, so the monthly expenditures and collections report, commonly known as the EC report, collects revenue and expenditure data by month. Due to recent changes in statute, this form is being updated to reflect payments that are due to the trust fund going from monthly to quarterly. And that started July 1st. So that's why this past quarter we've had some revised forms. They looked a little strange where it had monthly, and then the last 3 months of the year, there were some changes that went into that. So we are currently finalizing the EC report for next year, working on that spreadsheet that will then reflect this quarterly excess amount that we'll have to track. CCOC uses this data to track revenue expenditures throughout the year and build analyses as needed. Jason Welty will go over some of these revisions of the form and the process later today at the association's training at 2 p.m. So please feel free to listen to that for additional information and more information from us to come. We do have the most recent form that we've sent out for last fiscal year that was just due. So Rafael, do you have any commonly found mistakes on the EC report?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Griffin. You know, just to piggyback on what Griff said about the 112 payments, you know, a commonly seen mistake that I've seen is people not adding in those 112 payments that are now quarterly. So make note of that. And then another common seen mistake is people are not sending, people are sending money to the trust fund when it's not being calculated on line 163. So please, if it hasn't been calculated on line 163 on that EC report, there's no need for you to send money to the trust fund unless there's a you know, an error or something like that. But there's no reason. Please ensure also that you use the correct remittance line is used for those payments. So that just helps us a lot, especially, you know, leading up to settle up. And also, as you know, we're beginning the settle up process. Please, as a friendly reminder, the settle up payments on the DOR remittance, those are two different DOR remittance lines. So your payments to the trust fund and then the settle up payment, those use two different lines. So, you know, just please be aware of that. It just helps us, you know, not have to backtrack and try to get anything adjusted on the DOR side. And then Griff, I believe we have a question in the chat from Dana. I don't know if you see it. If we have a jury shortfall for a quarter, should we include those expenditures on the EC report once we know the amount?
Yes, great question. And yes, so any overage, since that would be a CCOC correlated expenditure, right, that would reflect any funding that has to come from that would be on the correlated expenditure line. The good news is, again, if we are approved for the quarter that just closed, which is county fiscal year Q4, hopefully that won't come into effect until next county fiscal year. But great question, thank you. And also, as Rafael mentioned, the EC form, excuse me, does calculate the projected settle up at the bottom, and also shows you the remaining budget authority throughout the year that you have right below that. And your total CCOC budget each year is always reflected in cell D8 at the top of the form. Any questions on the EC report? Seeing none. All right, lastly today, we will cover the operational budget submission. The operational budget is very similar to what we did last year and contains two forms. It's the operational budget spreadsheet, and again, the signed certification letter by the elected clerk. And again, as a reminder with this, we haven't sent it out yet. We hope to send it out soon, but the revenue projection form will no longer be a part of this submission for this year. So the operational budget form collects, it's probably our biggest form, has 10 tabs, and collects detailed budget information on personnel costs, FTE detail, operating and capital costs, as well as funds from non-court sources. It currently collects budget projections for the upcoming fiscal year. However, there is currently a proposal that's up for committee and council consideration to collect prior year actual data instead. It wouldn't be both, it would be one or the other. I think there was some confusion that we are now doing this twice a year, which I know we did years ago, but that wouldn't be the case. We would, either way, we would just do it once a year still. But more information to come on that. We'll send something out as soon as that either gets approved or not. So this is the operational budget spreadsheet that we've used for the past few years. Again, has 10 tabs, collects detailed information on FTE breakouts, operating costs, capital costs if needed, and then has summary tabs at the end that do a thorough breakdown. And again, the front page is a very helpful resource that lets you know of any warnings or errors or issues that we have for the rest of the tabs. It tells you why it's showing up and what tab it's addressing. So again, more information to come on that. Michael.
Thanks, Griffin. Hey, just a quick question. Do we know, when is this going to actually be due? Do we have a due date that it needs to be submitted by yet or not?
No. So we are still waiting to see what happens, whether it will be a projection on the out year or prior year actuals. So as soon as we know that, we'll send it out, but we'll adjust the due date accordingly. I think it's usually due early mid-December, but obviously the later we send it out, we'll make sure that we give staff ample time to fill it out. So if it has to be pushed back this year, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on the operational budget? Heather. Heather?
Sorry, I was double muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. On the question on the actuals, will this form change if the committee decides to show prior year actuals, or will it stay the same and you're just going to put a different value in the same field?
So it will say it will stay the same. I mean, obviously, if there's verbiage that says projected, we would remove that. But for now, yes, it would stay the same. However, moving forward, we are looking to potentially streamline this. It's a lot of data, so we're going to really look at what's actually used, what's actually helpful, if we could combine and condense some things. But that would not be for this year. That would be, the form for next year. So to answer your question, yes, if it is determined and voted and approved to collect actuals, we would still use the same form for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the operational budget? All right, seeing none. Now we will enter a time where you can ask any questions that you have on anything that we do in the budget realm, on any of the forms we've gone over today. I think we didn't mention this earlier, but we no longer have pandemic recovery plan funding. So that form will no longer be required. But again, we have no PRP funding moving forward this year. The only state funding that we have is the jury funding. So any questions?
Griffin, do you want me to go over those commonly seen mistakes on this one specifically as well?
Oh, I apologize. Absolutely.
No worries, sir. No worries. Thank you. Commonly seen mistakes on that operational budget submission would be not adding which version you're submitting of the form. It's particularly with this one. This just can throw us way off because you could be submitting a version 2, but it's being recorded as version 1. So please, that just helps staff over here be able to better review your submission. Not using copy and paste special values when copy and pasting information into the spreadsheet. Please, this ensures that our macro here in our office properly pulls the data that is being provided in that spreadsheet. If you take any notes on the operational budget, please you take that one. Just because it's it's kind of because I don't like to reach out to a county that doesn't copy and paste special values and tell them that they have to, resubmit everything that they've already added into that spreadsheet. So that just helps all of us. And then not providing additional information on the operational budget spreadsheet for other costs. So on that operational budget spreadsheet, you'll see so the front tab, like Griffin stated, it will ask you to explain things. So just adding in those extra explanation where it's needed, just helps us a lot because we won't have to hunt you down in order to try to get that explanation. So it just saves time for all of us. But that's everything I got, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rafael. And Dan, I saw your question in the chat on the operational budget, and you're referring to the personnel tab. So there's a few ways to do that. And the question is, if you have an employee and their percentage changes throughout the year, or even if there is turnover in the same position, you can either average it out, for your question of if the percentage changes, you can average that out to the total, or you could do two different lines, even if it's the same position number, or if you did, position 1A, 1B, and that goes to for so let's say there's a position, someone works 3 months in the year, then they leave, then you have a month, lapse or gap, and then, you hire a new employee who works in that same position for 8 months. If you wanted to, however your systems in your offices track that, if you wanted to roll that into one line, and obviously it'd only be 11 months of actual cost, even if they made different salaries, you could average that out. Or you could have, again, a line 1A that has 3 months of actuals, and then line 1B that has the 8 months that they worked after the month lapse. Okay. And again, that's something that if it is approved, we will definitely, I see some other comments on that in the chat. We would definitely look at that. The first year would probably be a learning curve, but that would help us, if we do have the opportunity to revamp that form and streamline that form, we could do it at that time. All right. Any other questions on anything that you have for CCOC staff? Seeing none. Okay, well, that concludes the training for today. Thank you so much again for taking the time. And as always, if you have any questions on anything that we do, any forms that we have, please feel free to reach out to myself, Rafael, or anyone else here at the CCOC. And I think that's it. Again, any forms that we have for anything that is due, we'll always send those out, or at least send a link to the website to download those forms once they're published, and also with the related due dates, certification letters, policies, things like that. So we will continue to inundate your inbox with emails. All right, no other questions. Well, thank you everyone again, and have a great day.